scenarios and situations, like I said with Cynthia yesterday, where they've been unprotected, okay, and have had to fight for their lives from birth. Now, I'm going to play some clips from her audio, her from a podcast that she did, where she spoke about some of the learns that she had and some of the things that she even learned in terms of even. Okay. All right. So, all right. So, sorry, my internet decided to wanted to play up, right? So, whilst we're here, you know, and she spoke about some of the learns that she learned from these situations in terms of her marriage and her past relationship and what she had gone through and, you know, what she had experienced. Okay. All right. So this is also very much important as well, right? We're going to focus on this Anyala part, and then I'm going to go to the podcast so you can get a better understanding as well in terms of what I'm discussing here as well. I got some clips as well, but I'll bring that to the fold in a second too. Let's just continue the conversation with Anyala, and then we'll break it down a bit more in terms of what's happening as to why we're here in the first place.
Okay, I hear you articulating, Ayanla, this masculine energy traits, the competitiveness, the assertiveness. Tell me how you would aggressive.
Grace, yeah, aggressive, not assertive. It's okay for a woman to be assertive. Grace, first of all, I think we've lost our grace. We move in such a harsh and hard way. Grace, compassion, nurturing, nourishing, elegance. How about majesty? How about divinity? How about holiness? This is not a language you hear coming out of most women's mouths, but they'll talk about being a boss, being a diva, being, you know, in charge. And many of us are either not seated in our throne as queens, or we're in the throne and the crown is crooked, meaning we're in the throne and we don't really know how to hold that place without the masculine aggressiveness and demanding and attachment. And it's killing us. It really is.
Now, first thing I want to break down here, what she describes is something I spoke about just yesterday as well. Assertiveness versus aggressiveness. Oftentimes, it becomes aggressive in the manner people approach certain situations. When we spoke about someone being agreeable, disagreeable, but agreeable versus combativeness, right? So she's really trying to break that down first and foremost about finding that fine line for women, because when we talk about relationships, oftentimes the aggression and the combativeness is coming from somewhere, right? The aggression and the combativeness is coming from somewhere. Where's it coming from? Unprotection. Okay? The combativeness and also the aggression, okay? The need to be right, okay? The belittling and the belligerent language and this distaste for men and some of the way they behave is coming from unprotection. When there has been a father figure who has left you spare, there's a father figure who has not been emotionally present, who hasn't cared about you, who hasn't showed you love, who hasn't appreciated you, hasn't covered you. This leaves a child, a woman, a young girl, a young Black girl, especially specifically, leaves them exposed. Okay, they're in pain. And oftentimes the pain is exercised in the behavior. I don't need a man. Okay, I can do all good by myself. Okay, men ain't sheesh. Men are trash. Okay, and how much more other words you want to say, right? Okay, maybe quote unquote, if you own the bus, yes, when in Rome, right? Okay, it is usually the energy that carries behind it. It is the energy that's carried behind it, the venom that often comes behind some of the statements that are made rather than the statements itself, right? And the same thing you also see in the manosphere when they put certain statements in a particular arrangement. You can hear the pain because the way they are able to put blame on the opposite sex without really discussing the nuances, you can tell there's pain in your spirit. When you're constantly trying to attack people, the same way Kevin Samuels was doing. Kevin Samuels, as much as people might say how great Kevin Samuels was at points in time, some of the rhetoric tells me you were in pain because you refused to be able to bring nuance into a conversation, to bring some type of understanding, really to actually bring people together. It was about being right. And that comes from a place of what? Pain. Okay? So the reality of the situation is what Anyana is kind of saying here is that let's not confuse the language here. A lot of people are saying, I'm an assertive babe. No, you're aggressive. Don't create a twist. If you're assertive, it'll be different. And she's saying, no. Some of you are not, some of you are you're saying, I'm strong. No, you're masculine. You're not vulnerable. And so she's almost reframing the language to make it very clear for our good sis here, right? And this is building up a picture, because when I go into the podcast, you understand where I'm coming from. It's just building up a picture, a nice little picture. Let's get into it.
So in a recent interview with our dear friends over at the Breakfast Club, that went very viral for very good reason, you said that women are being trained to be men in skirts. I will acknowledge, I will say I was triggered. I was a hit dog, and I hollered to the entire production team to get you here today, because I actually think you're right. I think you're right, Ayanla. I do think that I'll just speak for myself vulnerably. When I think of a masculine posture and what I would expect a man to do in my life, two things come top of mind, and they are provide and they are protect. And when my lived experience, and I think I'm still relatively young, I guess, but I'm 40 in September. So, I've had some relationships, and I've yet to find a man who has shown, this includes even my father, who was absent. I've yet to have a male.
Let's pause it. Let's pause it. This is where our issue is. This is precisely where our issue is. It is not the bus driver. The bus driver is just a vehicle that triggered in its moment to speak to a larger cause issue. Remember I said to you earlier on about the contempt that came across. It's because there's an unhealing in this area, and the feeling that she had as soon as she heard about a bus driver, I'm going to lower myself to a bus driver. Now, she didn't say it that way, but the energy that was arisen through her body, like she said she was triggered. She said she was triggered about the Breakfast Club situation, right? But I personally feel she was also triggered by the bus situation. You're going to ask me to go lower? You're going to ask me to go lower than I need to? Do you know how hard I've worked to even get to this level? Right? And remember, I said to you, it's not the problem of her saying no to the bus driver. It's how she said it. And I said there's an energy coming from behind it. Now, I had to watch this to figure it out. And then I had to go and research to figure out what was going on. Right? But as you heard very clearly, a lot of her energy is coming from being unprotected. Let's just quickly listen a little bit back what she said.
Some relationships. And I've yet to find a man who has shown, this includes even my father, who was absent. I've yet to have a male energy that provided or protected me consistently ever. So I think that
do you know how painful it is to be in a place where there's been no male energy that has consistently, as she said herself, consistently provided and protected? Provided is one thing, but protected is another. You see, provided, you can always say, at least my father loved me. He cared about me. Now, he couldn't necessarily make all the money. Now, you might have a bit of trauma in the financial area, but at least a man can love you. But if you are in a space where, too, you are also unprotected, your father figure, you never knew who he was, right? Then, of course, the way you're going to look at the opposite sex is going to be different. And actually, a lot of times when we're discussing these issues, both on the men and women side, when I spoke about this yesterday, it's the exact same thing. Both men and women are suffering because of parental issues. Men have got mommy issues and daddy issues. Women have got mommy and daddy issues too. Right? And a lot of the issues when it comes to dating, divorces, and marriages is because of the issues of the parental figure. Either they were emotionally not present or they weren't present at all. either mothers were overbearing and treating their sons like husbands, or the mothers weren't there present at all, or they weren't included at all, right? But there are issues that are happening behind the scenes. So she said to us, listen, she is yet to experience consistently a male figure provide and protect. Now, what is that going to do to her mindset? This is going to create the need to protect oneself. This is going to create the need to provide for oneself. This is going to create an over dependence on oneself and make it very difficult to want to open up themselves to be vulnerable to someone else. Right? It's going to make it very difficult for that woman to open herself up to other men and say, let's have teamwork. In fact, a lot of people, even in my chat, the issues with teamwork, the issues with men actually isn't with men, it is with their fathers. Some of the men that come across this channel, some of the men that are in the manosphere, their issue isn't women, their issue is your mother. It's your mum. You have beef with your mum and you're making women your beef. But reality is you have not figured out what's wrong with you when it comes to your parental figure. Some of you hate women because you hate your mother. Your mother hurt you. Your mother abandoned you. Your mother was overbearing. Your mother never let you know who your father was, right? Kept you away from your father. And now you're angry. But instead of actually looking at deeper and going, why am I angry at women? You're sitting on my internet manosphere talking about how bad women are. Here's another thing I find frustrating, right? I hear men say, don't date single mothers. Some of you come from single mothers. Some of you come from single mothers. You needed a father figure. Shoot, if you had one, you might not turn out the way you did. But you out here